Hello, patrons. It is Tuesday, December 5th, 2017. This is your Cup of Jones, fully aware that I was shuffling and breathing before the podcast. There's some weirdness going on with the television, so I got the big screen up there, and I slide the XSplit window over so I can watch it, so I can change all of the stuff, and was a little thrown off because I moved it over and didn't see it, so I think the computer's a little confused about what monitor is where. And it's just one of those things that you think you got everything going, you think you got all the boxes checked off, and that one thing was weird, and so I don't think I realized that the mic was unchecked, so you could hear me. Good thing I didn't talk to myself, spout obscenities. Good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday, December 5th. We have lots of stuff to talk about. Apologies, I got 6 hours of sleep last night, but it's one of those mornings where it's the wrong 6 hours. You're just like, ooh, maybe if I got 5 hours, it'd be different. If I got 7 hours, it'd be different. But a little sleepy this morning, a little behind on a couple things. Didn't shave. Hair's a little long, a little schlubby today for Cup of Jones. But hopefully I'll get myself cleaned up before our group stream tonight. Tonight, we are streaming Gang Beasts. Finally. This is a game that I have long wanted to stream with the Allies. I've long wanted to play with the Allies. I don't think I've ever actually even just sat down and played it with anybody who is an official Easy Ally. But I have played this game many times before and very much enjoy it. Of all the times I've played this game, I still don't think I even know exactly what the controls are, but that's kind of the point. What is hilarious is Gang Beasts finally, at long last, launches on consoles next week, but it's this week, so we're going to be playing it on PC, likely the last week that a lot of people are, because they'll be checking it out now on consoles. But we're going to be playing that tonight, and then next week is the final Hall of Greats for the year of 2017. Maybe I will finally get mine picked. I still don't know what I'm going to do. I got to pick a good one if I actually wanted to get it in there. We've talked about this a lot lately, put up a post on Patreon. If I have time this week, might do a little YouTube video to remind people as well. They're headed to PSX this weekend. We're having a meet and greet. I keep calling it a meet and greet. The Allies will would like to officially call it a meetup. I think a meet and greet is a little too formal. Meet and greet is kind of what we did at PSX this year. This is technically a meetup in the terms of Easy Ally, so I will call it that moving forward. Saturday, 6 p.m., Laguna Ballroom, Hilton Anaheim, right across the street from the Anaheim Convention Center. Big week, Game Awards, PSX, and the betting special that we finally did, starring myself and Ian Hink. I invite you to check out. It's now up on YouTube, Easy Allies, and we also posted that on Patreon, and of course, easyallies.com. I deeply regret, I think my biggest regret from the betting special is there's one opportunity I gave Ian to go first, basically, in kind of a ping-ponging of bets back and forth, and I should have gone first because he got all the good questions that he could easily make things difficult for me. I don't have a ton of confidence going into PSX this week. I don't know what to do. Like, do I either, because I've never been this close to actually winning, do I put, like a list of all of the bets and then check them off as I'm watching PSX, or do I just not think about it and then see how things add up after the fact? I don't know. I'm going to have a lot of pressure going through that anyway. Didn't talk about this, I don't think, either, and it's, as far as improvements to the garage, it's one of the things that you will probably see the least, or notice the least, we got a new television. We haven't gone 4K yet here in the garage. There are, of course, some Allies that have gone 4K. Considering this is Easy Allies money, this is patron money that we are spending on these expenses, it is something that I wanted to spend as little as possible, given that it's not... we are using this television mostly for group functions, and so. But one of the big things that was I had to play previous games on a different television because the TV that I had, which is over there now, does not support 1080p. That's how hardcore old that TV was, and so we finally upgraded. It ended up just being $500 at the end of the day, all told, because we got a little black Cyber Monday deal. Thank you, Best Buy. And so I got a 55-inch Samsung LED, and then moved my old Pioneer Plasma that we were previously playing on over to my desk, which is totally out of control huge. But it's kind of nice because I got Chet's there. I got Chat there. Chet's Chat, and Chat is very easy to read and larger than life. I've not done a ton of editing on there since I brought that monitor over, so I'm looking forward to cutting the podcast tonight in 55 inches. But so yeah, fun purchases. Again, not something that's really going to affect your life or your world that you might not notice if I don't bring it up. And yeah, and well, let's get into feedback. Obviously, there's been an issue in our community with not only me appearing on Colin's podcast, but me communicating all of the issues surrounding that, kind of speaking back to specific groups of our community and the community at large. Appeared on Fireside Chats last week. You can go check that out on Colin's podcast, on Colin's Last Stand, which is Colin's Patreon, if you would like. Understand that that is not your cup of tea. Still have about 5 or 6 questions of people addressing stuff that I talked about last week. Some stuff that some people thought I didn't specifically address, so I will specifically address if some of you, as I have seen kind of an exhaustion in comments, are kind of tired of the issue. I'll save it towards the end. Not necessarily do an editorial this week, but we'll get to that. And you can opt out if you feel you have said your piece or you think I have said all that you need to hear on the issue. But that is definitely something that takes a while to talk about and is difficult to talk about live. And so a lot of people are like, I see what you're getting at. I don't think you worded that correctly. I will do my best to word it correctly. But again, this is done live. This is off the cuff. I do not. The questions are scripted. The answers are not. And so it's not only a matter of addressing an issue, but addressing an issue in a show that is geared toward talking about Easy Allies in general. In some ways, it is Cup of Jones. I'm representing myself, but in some ways I'm also representing the allies. And so I try not to be too aggressive. I try not to be too pointed when addressing things. And I will attempt to do so, but might get a little more on point than I have with certain issues in the past. And then hopefully moving forward, this past week, I've spent a lot of time talking offline. I've spent a lot of time talking via DMs with people on Twitter. Spent a lot of time messaging people. Spent a lot of time going back and forth via email. There's a lot of people that I responded to via email. They sent me great responses. I have not gotten back to them because I have moved on to another medium to talk to those people on that website. And so lots of reading, lots of learning, lots of talking now. And thank you, everybody that chimed out. I know I've said that. I know that even frustrates some people, so I won't double down on that too much. But we will get to that probably in about 45 minutes to an hour, because I was a little concerned going into the questions from last week. I was like, oh no, is this just all going to be about Colin? But there are a lot of fun comments, a lot of things that are maybe kind of like about issues that came up and not necessarily geared toward him or his community or his show. I hope I am doing this now correctly. Mikel Hervel Nemo. The O with the line through it, I gotta look that up. I'm not exactly sure what that does to words when it's thrown in there. There are lots of little fun characters you can put on vowels to help you with pronunciation that I do not practice and understand as well as I should. I don't care too much, but you told us to correct pronunciation of names. Mikel Hervel Nemo, I think, is how I would write it, Americanized. Many Danish people can't even pronounce my name when reading it for the first time, so whatever. Let me know if I got that wrong. Sometimes, another recommendation for people that want me to pronounce something correctly, sometimes people will just tell me the pronunciation of one vowel. They'll be like, oh, it's an E at the end. I think somebody says coming up, I believe it's Villy Ranto, says, oh, it's an E at the end of my name, but I don't know if it's V or Villy or Viley or, you know, I know it's an E at the end, but I still need some other syllables there to correctly pronunciate. Louis Sandiford, would it be possible for Tabletop Escapades to be streamed on Twitch in the future? That's entirely up to Ben Moore. So you can ask Ben Moore. I will ask Ben Moore. Obviously, as the season of Tabletop Escapades is winding down, the beginning of 2018 is a perfect opportunity to reevaluate lots of things about Tabletop Escapades, along with other shows. And so I will take that under advisement, Louis. Louis or Louis? Laughter47, I noticed there are a few allies who are active on Reset Era, but not the actual Easy Allies forums. I don't have a big opinion on it, but it'd be nice if they visited both forums. That's true. That's another thing. As I've been talking on social media here in Cup of Jones, on various places throughout the internet about things potentially changing with how we deal with the community, how we take responsibility on ourselves and give responsibility, or you know, some people in our community take the responsibility to manage others in the community. When we kind of reevaluate that whole process, I think it's important to understand where we're having these conversations and what is the responsible time spent at certain areas, who amongst the allies is responsible for that. But it's a double-edged sword, because I see what you're saying, where that can be frustrating, where you see us going other places and being vocal and not necessarily going back to our own headquarters and continuing the conversation there. At the same time, I think the closer you get, as someone who's read a lot of comments over the last week, and again, I want to speak about these things broadly, because I think even if you take specifically what the controversy is about out of the equation, there's still a lot to learn just in how this whole thing was processed. And I think the closer you get to the core of Easy Allies, the comments made here on Patreon, and even closer than that, the comments made on EasyAllies.com and our forums, they tend to get more civil, and they tend to be more understanding of each other, and personalities are still who they are, but I just think the communication is in general better. And so I think the interest is for some of the allies, especially some like Ben, that I don't give Ben the call-in briefing every morning, and so Ben, unfortunately, has had to deal with a lot of this stuff without a lot of the information from my end, and so sometimes it's best to go out to other forums and other places and inform people that are having conversations elsewhere. The type of decorum is a great word that somebody sent to me on Twitter when describing something. I was like, decorum is a word I don't use as much as I should. So I could see that going both ways. Lessons learned on both ends, their laughter. But an excellent point. Stefan Vlemix. About the sponsors and games, some of them make Iron Harvest Scorn. About sponsors and games some of them make, Iron Harvest and Scorn. You say there won't be reviews, but I remember you or another ally saying you will still do streams. I have said that in the past. Has that changed in any way or not? I get why you don't want to do reviews, but I would love to see your guys' impressions on those games. Especially Iron Harvest is looking really neat. I did see the Scorn stream, which was pretty neat. About Iron Harvest, though, for quite some time I've been following Simon Stalenhag. He's a Swedish artist that does art about the 1980s, but with influences from science fiction. Sort of like 1980 plus. Via his art, I stumbled upon 1920 plus, quite some time before they began working on Iron Harvest. So it's really cool to see that art coming to life. Can't wait to see and play that game. It was very cool seeing the art come to life, because I was literally given art for Iron Harvest, and that's what we used as visual assets when we talked about it during podcast halftime before we got video. And so it was neat getting the screenshots from them, seeing what they meant by 1920s plus, seeing that style, and then seeing it move, seeing it come to life. And that game does sound fascinating. Yeah, we will definitely stream this stuff. That hasn't gone away. We are not afraid of covering games that are our podcast sponsors outside of the podcast as a kind thank you to their months and months of support. I believe it was mentioned, I think people mentioned in the comments, but Ian and Huber did play Scorn when that demo came out. And I think that's the thing, is we basically wait on those publishers to contact us. I'm in regular discussions. Sometimes credit cards don't get processed on Patreon. Sometimes blurbs are changed for podcast halftime. And so I'm regularly communicating with Rick Hogue and Scorn and a lot of these people, Mango, and we have some really fun new podcast sponsors this week. I'm constantly talking with them, and so there's lots of opportunities for them to update us and say, hey, if you're Iron Harvest, we have a demo, we have something that we would like you guys to check out. And so we got the update on Scorn when that demo came out, and so Easy Update seemed the perfect time to do that. I'm probably bad at Iron Harvest. I'm not good at strategy games like that. That might be a Huber stream. But yeah, we're not backing away from that. That's definitely something we want to do. We want to promote those games in every way we can, but much like doing bets around the Game Awards, considering the fact that we are jurors and Kyle Bossman is very closely involved in its production, doesn't seem cool. And officially scoring games that give us thousands of dollars does not seem cool either. Daniel Garza and Andrade. At the start of Cup of Jones, you gave updates on shows and other various things happening inside EZA, but now only respond if someone does a question about it, or redirect the question to the person involved in it. It would be nice to have an update on shooting and some ideas about spoiling the surprise you all want to give us. So basically meaning I did a little blurb at the beginning. I talked about the Game Awards coming up this week. I talked about PSX, our meetup. Talked about the bets, other things that are generally happening around EZA. Didn't necessarily give you an update on the Souls Retro. Still working on it. Been focusing more on communicating with our community this week than working on features. But don't necessarily give you updates on other things that have not been done. I kind of don't want to be a broken record. I guess I don't want to start the show off with obvious information, but maybe that's something more of you can chime in on if you would like to hear that, a general update on things, even if I don't have an update. Also, when it comes to things like Box Peak or Game Sleuth, if I am specifically given information for an update, I will deliver that information. But a lot of times, I think Kyle has done an excellent job, and certainly a better job than I could, updating you on all things Box Peak. And so when those updates happen, I believe there should be one at the beginning of the month, so there might already be one for Box Peak for Kyle. But let me know if that's something you want me to do. If you want me to pad out that intro a little bit more, addressing things that I don't generally talk about. Parasite Paladin has an excellent question, maybe my favorite question from this week. Not to pick favorites. How would you suggest somebody join the community or break into it? From what I understand, the best way, and pretty much only way, is through Twitch. Other than that, it's the EZA forums. Can you give advice to anybody wanting to join the EZA community you are always praising and the members so vigorously defend? So, this is a very interesting question, and certainly something that I don't think about a lot because this is very far outside of my immediate perspective. Somebody who is not familiar with EZ Allies, somebody who joins EZ Allies, I imagine our EZ Allies podcast and our group stream are probably those two moments where you'll most hear about us. It's when we're all involved, we tweet that out, we play games that the people want us to play, and they engage in social media about it. And of course, our just the general podcast that carries our name that we promote. But when people come in, where do they go? Obviously there's our forums, and I'm paraphrasing some of the things that Parasite Paladin has said, but these are things that I've been thinking about. There are forums, but that community, that conversation, it can be difficult for people to jump into because we enjoy spending time with each other so much. Memes can be floating around, statements can be said based on jokes, based on shows, based on jokes on shows, that it's tough for you to understand what's happening. And so I think the best way, I don't know if necessarily creating a whole nother place for people to go is the best way to do that. I think we just need to create more value in how, in the comments section on some of the streams that we do, maybe do a welcome stream once a month, or have specific places in the EZ Allies forums that we engage more in on a regular basis that are geared toward welcoming people, that people come in. I know almost, I think that's kind of like a standard for forums, is to have a place where people come in and introduce themselves and say something about themselves, and kind of like not a suggestion box, but an information booth for EZ Allies, some place to go where you can check in with mods and address some questions that people might not be thinking about that often because they are already comfortable with and ingrained into the community. But that is definitely one of my takeaways for this episode, Parasite Paladin, and that is something that I will think about a lot. I think, again, it's not necessarily that place doesn't exist right now. It's just not something that we are valuing as much as we should value it, and understanding how necessary it is for this very reason, for this person, especially considering the last couple weeks and a lot of talk that's happened around collaborations and working with other communities and bringing them in. People come in, we'll get to this later too, from another community, and then what? Dale Payne, when you describe collaborations, are there opportunities besides simply showing up on each other's shows? Yes. There are new shows that I'm thinking about. I know that doesn't necessarily answer the question perhaps the way you wanted to, but I definitely want to do at least one new show next year that is geared toward collaboration with people. In one way, it helps sell it, it helps brand it. Brand manager would be happy about that. But in another way, it gives us a not only promise to our community, but it's on us, every, once a month or every other week or something like that, to be like, oh wait, that show's coming up. So we need to create an opportunity, create a collaboration, even if it's collaborating with someone that we've collaborated with before. Just again, opening up that line of communication, introducing people to other people that we like working with in the community, and communities that we might want to try on and chat with and see how it goes. But thinking outside the box, are there opportunities besides simply showing up on each other's shows? Well, technically everything we do is a show. I mean, I think possibly outside of that would be events. Kind of Funny is actually really great in including a lot of people in the Kind of Funny Live whenever they do that. We did our first live show at our 1-year anniversary. That was strictly us. I think we had a couple people come in just for the sake of performance, but they were not necessarily like huge celebrity guest stars. And so that might be something possibly that changes in the future. But outside of that, Dale, I would only see events. But then again, those are also shows. So, Dale, I'm not sure if that's a question that you asked with you yourself possibly having an answer to it. But if you do have an answer or suggestion, I'd love to hear it. Because I'm going to start with shows. That's the easy way to do it. Easy way to communicate with somebody that you might not be that familiar with, reach out to them. We have the show. Would you like to be on it? Yes, no. Check the box. Fold up the piece of paper, give it back to me in class. Wayne Comstock, as a fellow big Disney fan. Here we go. I was just curious why you don't seem too enthused about the live-action adaptations, and if you could share some thoughts as to why, or where you would like to see Disney go with their big movie properties going forward. Oh boy. Yeah, I got issues with this. I'm a little too sleepy right now to do a rant. I don't know if this will be full rant from me, and this is something that I know people are like, "Oh God, we're talking about this again." And maybe I didn't clarify myself. This is something that I've long wanted somebody to bring up so I could clarify the issue. But there's lots of different things. I will approach the. I have a big problem with the Mary Poppins sequel, but I will approach the Lion King sequel. A lot of people. I said I didn't like Jungle Book, and people were like, or I wasn't a fan of what they were doing in Jungle Book, and people were like, just go see it and you'll like it. I saw it and I didn't like it. I thought performances were fun. I like the cast. I like the cast of the Beauty and the Beast remake. I thought there were some creative choices in there that I thought were very interesting. Specifically, the ending I thought was kind of stretched out in a way that was dramatically satisfying. But Beauty and the Beast is a whole other thing. I think there's issues with a lot of them, and I want to specifically address Lion King. Lion King is not one of my favorite Disney films. I think in that era, Aladdin was my favorite. So I'm like very curious to see what they do with Aladdin. But Lion King's just animals. And it's a very interesting thing that Disney did in its first years of operation in animation was bringing animals to life, creating anthropomorphic characters, you know, telling the story of Robin Hood with animals, having Robin actually be a fox that could stand, that could shoot a bow, that there's this weird line between he's human but he's not, you know, and in Lion King they definitely took more of a strong stand on, no, they're animals, you know, it's like Simba's not walking around like this and dancing, like they're on all fours, like we definitely want to, you know, when I remember even back like in the 90s when that came out, I remember seeing lots of documentaries about them bringing in lions and bringing in hyenas and bringing in all these animals and seeing all of the animators all together and drawing pictures of them and using them for reference. But in the process of doing that, when you're that animator and you bring in an animal, and you put him on the floor and the animator's looking at that, the animator's not thinking, I gotta nail this. I gotta make sure that this is absolute one-to-one. I gotta create exactly what that lion looks like in animation. There's always kind of a give and take. There's a relationship between that animator and that lion to produce Simba. Simba is not a lion, is not a cartoon, is kind of a mix of both. Simba, in a lot of ways, moves like a lion actually does. Simba the child and Simba the adult. But it is still a character, specifically in the face. The face is drawn in a way so that when Simba moves Simba's mouth, it looks kind of like a person talking and kind of like a lion talking. When you and everything flows through that understanding of a character expressing itself. The music, the way the dialogue is written, the way the characters are conceived, the way the story flows, all of that is geared toward that Simba. So they draw a face, and then everything revolves around that. You know, you don't write music for that with like, oh, I have no idea what these characters look like. I'm just writing music. Like, it all has to fit a particular style. So when you take the style out, and you still have the music, and you still have the dialogue, and you still have the story, and you still have all the character beats, and all that dramatic arc and everything, but everyone's realistic now, it's weird. It doesn't match for me. It's like you took one element and changed it, and then didn't change anything else to accommodate the new thing that you're doing. So it's bizarre to me. It was very strange seeing wolves in Jungle Book that looked like real wolves talking. It's like, no, that looks so dumb. That looks so unusual. Wolves don't do that. They don't open their mouths to make sound come out. And if you're an animator back in the 50s, back in the 60s, at, you know, or the 20s or 30s, like at Walt Disney Animation, you're taking that into account that like, whoa, that looks super weird when I make a real lion go rah, rah, rah. But it's like, oh, if I make his eyes a little bigger and then do that, it doesn't look so weird. Where the animators now are like, no, he's gotta look realistic. You gotta think, wow, that lion just jumped off of the savannah and right into the studio in front of the green screen and is recording live. It's weird. It seems like Again, I think I've explained that as well as I possibly could, but that's why it's just bizarre to me that a lot of people are like, I really felt that character so much more than before, and I am the exact opposite. I'm like, I don't... seeing a bear, an actual bear, sing Bare Necessities is weird. It's bizarre to me. It's not how the song is written. That song is not written for a bear. It's written for a cartoon bear. Clearly. But that's just me. That's my take. The Beauty and the Beast rant is different from the Mary Poppins rant. Maybe we'll get to those later if anybody wants to specifically ask about those. But that's the Lion King rant. Wayne Comstock. Oh, nope, that was it. Villy Ranto. I'm guessing Ville. If that was a Villa, I would say Via. But obviously, if you say, as you'd like to know these, the E in Villy is not silent, so that you definitely want to pronounce the E. But if it's V, I'm assuming it's not V, so probably Villy. But if it's not Villy Ranto, let me know, Villy. On December 6th, Finland celebrates its 100th Independence Day. Finland, 100 years, congratulations. Do you have any favorite Finnish games you like? Remedy, Housemarque, Angry Birds. Definitely like Angry Birds. I definitely have appreciated Remedy games in the past, but I don't enjoy them as much as Michael Huber, I believe. Any particular thoughts about our northern country? I'm Norwegian, and so I know that probably in many ways is very different from Finland. I think I've been to Finland. If I have, it hasn't been for over a decade. But not a ton of thoughts. I'm sorry, maybe I should have done some research, but nothing is really jumping into mind. I recognize a lot of these games, a lot of these names rather, but yeah, apologies. Maybe people can jump into chat, so I feel some sort of kinship with Finland being Norwegian, but I might be ignoring some kind of war that maybe have happened between the two countries or something. Yay, go Finland. Really weird answer to that question. Sorry, a little sleepy. Andrew left. They're like, whoa, did you hear about that Easy Allies Finland controversy? It's this whole thing. The whole country's ganging up on him. Andrew left. What's one of your favorite couch co-op video game moments? Andrew, I was actually thinking about this very recently because as someone who is going to be 40 in not too long, it's interesting for me to look back on certain video game memories that the stories are kind of dull now. Like there are stories that I've told people before, moments that I've had in video games that were so incredible and so impactful at the time that I now have daily because of just how advanced games are back compared to the time when I had that. And one of the memories that seems commonplace now, but at the time was so incredible. One of my favorite co-op games of all time was the original Halo, Combat Evolved, Xbox. When that game came out, I was first starting game trailers, and I lived in an apartment with one roommate, and the two of us split-screened that whole game. It's funny now because it seems larger than life, but we probably played on a television much smaller than the one I play on now, and that screen was split, and so we're just kind of looking at the top and bottom. But I remember that just absolutely taking my breath away. I remember coming home, and I think we played through on normal, and then we played through the entire thing again on legendary. As we got comfortable with the game, we were like, okay, let's play this on the hardest setting, and then beat the game on legendary. And I just remember the first time, I think it's the third mission, the mission that starts at night. You're given sniper rifles right at the beginning. You're going along a canyon where there's a drop on the left, and you're trying to get to a ship to go up in the elevator up into the ship. And right when you go into the first area, you take a left and it kind of widens out, and there's a bunch of rocks. And there's a perfect sniping position off to the right, or you can go to the left and just kind of go out into the field. And I remember having a shotgun and taking out a Covenant soldier and then going to reload the shotgun and another Covenant soldier coming around the corner and me facing this guy and realizing, oh no, I'm reloading while this guy, and he geared up a big melee attack and then got sniped in the head from my buddy. Which, I mean, it happens all the time. You know, it happens when we're playing, you know, Call of Duty or Battlefield or Fortnite or whatever. But at the time, that was incredible. At the time, seeing that and recognizing that was something I was used to seeing in cutscenes or something. I was just like, wait, did that just happen? Like, did he just happen? Because he wasn't communicating to me. He didn't say, like, I got him right before he shot. I just, you know, saw the shot. I remember Halo also having sniper trails, which was really fun. Not a lot of games had done that, where after you saw the sniper shot, you would see a little bit of the trail where the bullet went. But that's always stood out to me. But again, kind of boring now. You're just like, that's not... In 2017, that's not that impressive. But everything about Halo Combat Evolved So good. I was thinking maybe of doing that for my Hall of Greats next week, but you know it's going to get shot down. Halo's not going to win. Come on. I got to get aggressive. Joey and Kate, what's the most surprising Christmas gift you've ever received? My 2 common video game stories regarding Christmas presents. The Nintendo 64 was wrapped in a giant box with question marks on it. Everybody in the family was brought in on what it was except for me. I was tortured for weeks, agonizing over what, because it wasn't addressed to anybody. And I would tell my mom, I don't care. If it's not for me, that's fine. Just let me know who it's for, just so I don't have to worry about that. And she's like, I don't know, Santa left it there. I don't know who it's for. And it was a 64, and I enjoyed it a lot. I also remember one of the only times I've ever done this, Scout's Honor, one of the only times I've ever done this, where I actually went underneath the Christmas tree, took a present, opened up the side of it just to take a peek at it, because I knew it was an NES game. It was my aunt, my godparents, my aunt and uncle, and family aunt and uncle, one of those people that you call aunt and uncle even though you're not technically related to them. And they'd gotten me a box, and you could just tell, you could shake it and hold it, and I'm like, that's an NES game. I was like, I wonder what it is. And I peeked and opened it, and it was Faxanadu. Faxanadu? I was like, what? What the hell's Faxanadu? I'd never heard of that. And so that was strange, you know, being like, cool, I'm going to play some NES game tomorrow I've never heard of before. And it's pretty fun. It's a side-scrolling RPG. Never beat it. Should maybe go back and make it right. Go beat Faxanadu. Michelle Van Mewen, I discovered Game Trailers because it hosted episodes of The Angry Video Game Nerd. Will James Rolfe, the AVGN, ever be a guest on the Easy Allies? Somebody already in the comments for Cup of Jones mentioned that James, unfortunately, does not live in California, lives far away from us. James is not a person I just bump into. James, used to be very involved with Game Attack or Screw Attack, who I'm still in communication with on a regular basis. But love James. Was one of the first real celebrities that I got to be around in the beginning of my video game career. And so it was really fascinating seeing his success. And, a lot of times when people look back on game trailers, they're like, oh, that's how I discovered a lot of people. That's how I discovered Hey Ash, What You Plan. That's how I discovered Screw Attack and the Angry Video Game Nerd, Mega 64. But at the same time, that fans of Mega 64 and Screw Attack and Hey Ash, What You Plan discovered game trailers because of them. And so while, we gave a platform for a lot of those people, props to Brad Winters, who handled a lot of those contracts back at Game Trailers, they also were instrumental in guiding people to us. James was and still is humongous. The guy made a movie. I mean, I've always been really impressed with his output and the fact that he's been able to do what he's been doing just because he is who he is. James Rolfe reminds me kind of a Weird Al Yankovic. Is kind of that person where you might not really be that in touch with his career, but they're still rocking. They're still doing what they do, uncompromised, still out there fighting the good fight. James, I, in my opinion, created a whole genre of YouTube video creation. A lot of people owe their shtick to the Angry Video Game Nerd, for better or worse. Robert Lewis. To answer your question, I mean, yeah, he's always invited, but that might be a little tricky to get out there and do something with him. Robert Lewis, the current Easy A trailer video where the team comes together is not the current. We've replaced it now. But I'm assuming you mean Allies Assemble. Can you give us some insight into how that came about, who planned it, who wrote it, shot it, any amusing stories from the creation of the video you can share? Robert, we've talked about this a little bit on Cup of Jones. We shot that in a day, I believe. Obviously, the Dawn thing was shot by himself, which is pretty impressive. I don't know if he got somebody to shoot that where he's by the creek on the cell phone, or if he just like held up his camera. If he did, very impressive. He might have just set that up on a tripod. Damiani was still in Texas at the time, so you can see Damiani at the end. He also recorded that himself. But that was shot in an afternoon, shot in and around my house, and written by Kyle Bossman. Some of the jokes were modified by some of the allies for their specific vignettes. But it was Kyle who wanted to put blood in the jacuzzi. It was Kyle who wanted me to look at lightning and see have her kind of make the decision for me, which is she still dictates a lot of my decisions. She's looking over my shoulder always. But it's over. It's gone. I mean, not the video. You can still check out. Can you? Allies Assemble? Yeah, you can probably go look back. I think it's like the first video we ever posted on Easy Allies, so you can check that out. But we've replaced that. I should have mentioned that at the beginning, too. We have a new video called Welcome to Easy Allies that is now up, introducing you to both our youtube.com/EasyAllies page and at patreon.com/EasyAllies, replacing both the Patreon announcement video and Allies Assemble, which was on Patreon and YouTube, respectively. And so feel free to share that. A lot of people have, and we appreciate that. A lot of people left some great comments. It's interesting making a kind of a video that's a tool to use, making a product, a service video, almost, if you will, and then having that get more downloads than other shows that we do. It's like, oh. But it is definitely something that we want to share, and it definitely is something that we want people to look at, and hopefully educates people. One of the things that makes me happy about that video is it doesn't mention everything. There's a lot of, we show Easy Living in there, which we don't really get into. We show the Hall of Greats, which we don't really talk about specifically. We show the Easy Allies in concert that we did last year. That we don't, or this year technically, that we don't specifically identify. And so it was fun putting some things in that videos that we don't, you know, I didn't want to make the video one giant list of everything we do, Red Dead Revisited, you know, all that stuff. And so it's kind of fun mentioning some things and then saying, and more, and thinking that there's a lot of that more. So hopefully that fulfills its purpose. If you have any notes on that, send them my way. All the allies signed off on it, but that is obviously a video that I want to evolve. I think one of the big things is, and one of the reasons why it took so long, is it's a very short video, but it's a short video containing clips that are huge in nature. So grabbing frame trap and picking the right moment to put a sound up in or put somebody saying something can be kind of tricky and a little time consuming. And so if you have any favorite moments that you think belong in that video, and of course I pass that out to the other allies as well, if there's something we're just like, oh, the end of that one tabletop episode is so funny, I think that would work really well. I decided to bookend the video with Easy Allies in concert because it's, although poorly lit, very different from other stuff that we do. Ford, bringing it down a little bit. Earlier this year, Chris Cornell passed away. I've been a huge fan of his for a very long time, even still, I'm surprised just how much his death has had an effect on me. It's been over 6 months, and I've tried many times, but I can't listen to his music anymore without getting emotional. In fact, I've barely listened to any music since then. So I guess I'm wondering, has a musician or celebrity's death ever had a bigger impact on you than you would have expected? Robin Williams destroyed me. I was not prepared for Robin Williams. I'm still not ready to let him go. That's one that I think about a lot. That really impacts me. I think as a kid, Jim Henson, when I was a kid, really affected me. Obviously because I was a big fan of his work, but I was just young enough that I didn't really understand what was going on. I didn't understand kind of why he died and what led to that, and so there's a lot of lessons that I've learned from that, especially because, I mean, you can see the bags under my eyes. I'm definitely someone in this industry that can be obsessed with their work, and that, I mean, you know, you could write a whole book about all the possible things that led to Jim's death, but I think a lot of those was just pure neglect of his well-being, and so that really got to me, and it's really unfortunate. If there's something you could have done, and again with Phil, that was so sudden to lose Phil Hartman, and he was so tied to just everything. I you know, was a huge Saturday Night Live fan, was a huge news radio fan. I loved Futurama and loved The Simpsons, and he was not on Futurama, but he was going to be Zapp Brannigan, and Billy West in his infinite talent. And as he has done actually many times in the past, just, you know, filled in for somebody, was like, oh, you want me to do that voice? Got it. And so it's Billy West doing an impersonation of Phil Hartman doing an impersonation of William Shatner. So pretty impressive. But recently, and I want to talk about Chris Cornell a little bit because he was a phenom, was absolutely incredible. Tom Petty hit me real hard. I was actually doing a Don't Die, Richard Eiley? Okay, I won't. I was doing a Cup of Jones. It was live, actually, when I found out Tom had died, because there was all this confusion the day before when he either had a stroke or I think maybe had organ failure or something, and was in the hospital, and his daughter was arguing with Rolling Stone, and there was just lots of communication back and forth. And so I believe he passed sometime in the night, and I missed it, and got up in the morning, and the chat was like, oh yeah, Jones, he's definitely gone. Love Tom Petty. Tom Petty's one of those people. There's some people that I like, Metallica, Beatles, Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, that I would encourage other people to listen to. If they're like, what are the Beatles? I'm like, here's some albums, you should listen to that. I don't expect anybody to like Tom Petty. Tom Petty is definitely, I think, an acquired taste. He's got a particular sound. That Tom Petty kind of twang, that yeah, like that kind of whine. I think one of my favorite lines that is just so egotistical but so funny is, "You got lucky, babe, when I found you." As far as leader, you got lucky, babe. That's hilarious to say to somebody. It's like, you know what I think about that day when we started dating? You lucked out. But I think Tom could do in a way where he could kind of distance himself from that things, and you would get the feeling that he was playing a character. He always seemed like he was having so much damn fun, and was just so uncompromising in his style. And that style to me was so consistent throughout his career. Whatever album Running Down a Dream was on, I believe Free Fallin' was on the same album. I got that as a cassette from my brother back in the day and popped that in and was like, who's this Tom Petty guy? I like him a lot. Chris Cornell is I tweeted about Chris Cornell when he passed. Chris Cornell might be the greatest voice I've ever heard in rock. And I say that because there's a lot of other voices that I have liked. Talented voices that could sing extremely high. I mean, Rush, Geddy Lee from Rush, for example. Like, wow, the name's completely escaping me, but the lead singer who has unfortunately passed from Journey. Ooh, the pipes on that guy. Sting, it's incredible, what he can do with his voice. But a lot of those voices to me are tied to the bands. It was tough originally hearing Sting perform outside of the Police. Some of these bands, it'd be weird. It's weird to hear Geddy outside of Rush, and obviously the lead singer of Journey. Somebody might be jumping in. It's something that is very familiar. Case in point, somebody is literally imitating him right now that is now in the band Journey. Chris Cornell was in a lot of bands. Chris Cornell floated all over the place, and so Chris Cornell to me was able to still kind of own his voice, and still, he would do a collaboration, and sometimes I would hear that someone collaborated, that they would be singing in the background, be it in a rock song or a rap song or whatever, and then after the fact, they'd be like, oh, that's Christina Aguilera? Okay, I wasn't really sure, because I heard her in the back, but I wasn't really sure what that is. There's no mistaking Chris Cornell. That is Chris. Nobody can do that. Like, nobody's doing Chris Cornell imitations. Like, it was X-Men caliber. What that man could do with his voice was just incredible. It's one thing as someone who has sung a lot, who's performed a lot on stage, singing, who's done a lot of vocal training, and having a echelon of people that you admire that are good singers, and then someone like Chris that's above and beyond. So that was, very, very rough. I respected him a lot, did not follow him as much as you do Ford, and obviously not as much as a lot of his biggest fans, but that was a loss for sure. Lots of names. Let's try to bring it back up. Stuart Jack. Bloodworth is highly underappreciated by the community for the job he does. Jobs, plural, many jobs. I feel without him, Easy Allies would be lost, and I would like to ask if you would personally give him a thank you for myself for the job he does within Easy Allies. Thank you, Daniel Bloodworth, for the job that you do within Easy Allies, from myself, from Stuart Jack, from the Easy community at large, from everybody, from Sophie, even though she's not here. Bloodworth is the most responsible out of us. Some of us may be more responsible about other things. Some of us obviously have other responsibilities that Bloodworth does not have to concern him with. But Bloodworth, more than any other ally, will make stuff happen without being requested, without being pleaded with, without demands. Bloodworth will, a lot of times you will find the charred remains of a fire that could have hurt you, and you'll wonder what happened here, and Bloodworth will come by and say, oh, I saw that fire, I put it out myself, you don't have to worry about that anymore. That's Bloodworth. And Bloodworth is one, let's see if Bloodworth pops up in chat. Blood's one where if I say something even slightly off, Blood will pop up in chat or let me know. There's at least one comment from Blood every day, and Blood is actually not here. No, I think Blood actually said he was busy this morning, and so he was a little concerned. Of course, reached out ahead of time and commented to me that he was not going to be in chat, and he hoped things that would be civil, and he hoped. No, he's not here, actually. Yeah. Uncanny Bloodworth. But having somebody like that is, of course, instrumental into the success of a property. Somebody who can get out ahead of things and can think about things from many different perspectives. To conclude with my love and admiration for Daniel Bloodworth, Bloodworth has been very, very helpful these past couple of weeks, directing a lot of comments that he's found elsewhere on the internet that he thought were applicable into some of the decisions that I was finding myself having to make. So not only getting input from Bloodworth, but getting input from people in our community that Bloodworth is going out A case in point, somebody mentioned earlier that they see us popping up on Reset Era, speaking that to community, but not so much on our own forums. Not something you have to worry about with Daniel Bloodworth. The man is everywhere. Matt Brookbank, my question was about doing a patron survey about changes in EZA's future. Matt asked a question previously on Cup of Jones. The comment was either deleted or I didn't get to it, but I'm getting to it now, Matt. I think I might have correctly labeled you, Matt. I think I might have said that Matt Brookbank said something that 44 Stars said last week, so that might have been the problem. I might have written your name down, but did not attach the correct name to the question. It happens. That is a very good suggestion. I've talked a lot about starting 2018 with a meeting with the allies, sitting down, talking about our community, talking about shows that we want to do, talking about other things that we need to address. It would probably be smart, not making promises, need to discuss this with the allies, but would probably be smart to do perhaps a group stream, maybe have one Tuesday night group stream, just be a pure Q&A in the interest of improving things here at Easy Allies, talking with the community, having people bring stuff up in chat. I say Tuesday night because everyone's going to get together anyway, or maybe that's just something I can do with Kyle, or of course Daniel Bloodworth, because he is all over stuff like that. Or we could do a patron survey, but maybe do both. Maybe do a stream where we gather all of the comments, figure out the top like 5 to 10 things that people want in our community, and then put that up as a poll on Patreon for people to vote on. Maybe make the results of that Patreon hidden so that we can then announce the things later that people are most concerned about that we want to do moving forward. Kif, what's the most dangerous wild animal you've crossed paths with where you live? I've had a badger on my doorstep and crossed the road to avoid a fox. It's tricky because, you know, I camp a lot and I go hiking a lot. And I've been all around this beautiful state of California, especially here in Southern California. So it's tricky, Kif. I can give you the close answer. I can give you the far away answer, which is not super far away. I'll give you the craziest answer I could think of. I'll give you the answer that jumped to mind the second that I read this question. And that was the time I stared a husked boar in the face. And that was at Camp Emerald Bay on the island of Catalina. We have several beautiful islands off of the coast here of California that we got boats going to. I have visited a couple of them. Catalina is one that I had been to several times in my youth because there is a Boy Scout camp there called Emerald Bay. I believe it is still there. I don't know how different it is now compared to when I was a kid. I have actually never been to Catalina just to like hang out at restaurants and stuff like that. I understand this is something that is so far out of the interest level of probably a lot of you that do not live in California, have never been to California, never will be in California. But those islands are also very interesting because they have birds and wildlife that only inhabit that island. There's one island called Santa Cruz. I don't know if the island itself is called Santa Cruz or if the string of islands is called Santa Cruz and that actual island is called something different. But there are foxes there that have no predators that hunt them. It's a free-for-all. It's just these foxes running around stealing stuff from people. We went and camped there, and Amanda and I try to be very responsible with like not littering and not having people, you know, leaving food out for people to steal. And a fox still got in and grabbed a hot chocolate packet, and it was great. Because when the fox grabbed the hot chocolate and ran away, it wasn't like, ooh, I grabbed the hot chocolate, now I gotta get out. It just kind of trotted away like, screw you guys, I got hot chocolate. I was at Camp Emerald Bay, which is on Catalina, and one night a bunch of boar came into our camp. And I heard people screaming and got out of bed, and no one was injured or anything. It just boars just came through. And I think because people were freaking out, they caused the boar to get riled up, and one of them got up on a table and knocked some stuff around. And I remember running out of my tent, and the boar like was standing on this picnic table, and I was like, I'm gonna go that way, away from where that boar is. And that was one summer, and then a year goes by, and I go back to Camp Emerald Bay the next summer, and the counselor comes out and does the introductory speech to everybody at the camp and says, I don't know if any of you recall, but we had some issue with wildlife, specifically boar, last year. And so in the interim, in the time between last summer and this summer, some very kind gentlemen went up in a helicopter with a sniper rifle, and now we don't have no more boar on the island. And I was like, and all of the Boy Scouts were like, and I don't know if he was messing with us or what, if they sedated them and moved them or whatever, but cleaned up that boar problem. And I think that was in like the 80s. That was a long time ago. But yeah, we'll never forget that. We get, here specifically at the house, we get squirrels, we get possums, we get mice, we get rats, we get spiders. Yeah, that was still close by, still not like super far away, that I've encountered some pretty awesome wildlife. Wildlife's fun. And, you know, I've seen bears and deer and other stuff, but those are the only memories that jump to mind where I'm like, whoa, that's a wild animal. Brandon K. Gann. With December upon us, I was wondering if, starting in 2018, EZA would consider more seasonal-themed group streams, like the Halloween streams you've had the last 2 years. A Christmas party, or New Year's celebration. A Valentine's group stream. Shout out to Waluigi Sneak and Love. 4th of July patriotic stream. Just some fun ideas to get a jump on 2018. Great idea, Brandon. Something that we should consider moving forward. One of the things that is an issue is that a lot of these are vacation time. A lot of these are times when... yeah, I guess we could have a Christmas party. We're going to have the Hall of Greats and possibly one more stream. I think we might be missing some people the week after Hall of Greats that are already out on vacation. But a lot of these times are times for us to step back and spend time with our loved ones or celebrate the holidays ourselves. And so I think that might be why we haven't made that a custom, that Halloween is something that does warrant a party and is a fun tradition that we can get behind. I personally just enjoy that holiday so much, and so does Huber and some of the other allies. And so I think that's why we're so quick to do that. But as we grow, some of these holidays might have to specifically be addressed. I like the idea of a Christmas party, or maybe New Year's. Maybe we can do like a New Year's kickoff. But again, doing it like on New Year's, we're all gone. Most of the allies are out of town. Andrew Nall, what do you enjoy more? Battling robot dinosaurs in Horizon Zero Dawn or killing orc captains in Shadow of War? We shouldn't call them dinosaurs, because they're not dinosaurs. I don't think any of them are dinosaurs. They're all like animals. You know, they're like dogs or like crocodiles or eagles. I don't think any are dinosaurs. There's no like T-Rex robot in Horizon Zero Dawn. So they're robot like animals. Let's say animals. Robot monster animals. But yeah, robots. Shadow of War was fun, but a lot of the satisfaction I got from killing orc captains was kind of carried over from Shadow of Mordor, where going back and playing... I'll say this, going back and playing Frozen Wilds as opposed to the original Horizon, going back and playing Shadow of War after having played Shadow of Mordor was more exciting going back to Horizon Zero Dawn. This is a big one. You ready? Joseph LaRussa has requested this entire comment be read. I was quite insulted with the tone that Dragon Age Inquisition was discussed on the November 22nd podcast. I feel that every other game mentioned as a winner of a particular year's most GOTY awards was met with intrigue, surprise, joy, expectation, or some combination of the four, but all with EZA jolly vibes except for DAI. The panel and Kyle seemed to roll their eyes, scoff, and Ben made a comment that sounded derogatory, or at least borderline so, when learning it had won so many awards. None of the other games were dismissed as a fluke that had good timing, as Kyle said. It felt very disrespectful, as if none of the allies could believe that anyone would have chosen it as GOTY, much less more outlets than any other game that year. I'm not big on being offended by things, but it's something I've noticed over the years that happens all the time when the game is brought up in any context. But this time, I had to bring it to your attention. What are your thoughts on the game? Why do the allies seem to have such disdain for it? They've never done a long discussion, so I'm not sure where the hate comes from. I respect their opinions, but the attitude is what I found so insulting. The attitude, I think that's important. Not opinion, not lack of understanding, but the attitude. As games journalists, you can make your opinion known, and should, but all the games are worthy of some respect. Even Battleborn. But especially those that have love from your peers at other outlets. I feel that being so dismissive is an insult towards your peers who loved the game, and that you don't respect their opinions on it, nor the opinions of fans of EZA and the game. Sure has myself. I'm sure that's not the case, but that's how it comes across. I'd like you to answer the question marks above, but address the entire comment and the spirit that I'm trying to get across. As harsh as this may sound, it is said, as always, with love and respect. I like that Joseph LaRussa specifically said, I want you to start talking here and finish talking here. And I was like, oh, all right. So there we go. Dragon Age Inquisition. Lots of things to cover. I think one of the things that might have had some crossover that I enjoy talking about, I think it's an interesting thing, is that year was interesting. There was no clear winner that year. That was the Hearthstone year. That was a year a lot of people had different opinions about what potentially the game of the year could be. And so I think maybe there was some carryover between not necessarily saying that Dragon Age Inquisition didn't deserve to win, but not being 100% sure what deserved to win. There were people involved in that decision-making process that are not involved in Easy Allies anymore. So there's a lot of people that could stand here and defend our decision of Hearthstone, or rather our decision to not give that game of the year to other people that are not around anymore. But I think maybe things were said about that year in general, about not being comfortable really with any of those games, that I think kind of got muddied the waters a little bit, with specifically concerning Dragon Age Inquisition. It's a tricky thing when you talk about GOTY, because sometimes you saying something about you not thinking why something should be GOTY can possibly be perceived as you thinking that other outlets should not have picked something as GOTY. I never want to say that. I never want to assume how a different outlet should have felt about a game. I don't know every outlet personally. I don't check in with them on a daily basis. I don't know how their office works. I don't know how they communicate with each other. I don't know what circumstances led to them picking a game of the year. I say all of that and now switch to my own personal experience with Dragon Age Inquisition, which is why maybe I didn't speak up, and maybe I should have, during this conversation that happened on the podcast, because that is a game that has always tainted my backlog, because I played Dragon Age 1, really enjoyed it, played Dragon Age, both expansion packs, went back and played all of it again because I did a special feature at Game Trailers back in the day before Dragon Age 2 came out, explaining, or it might have been before Dragon Age 2 DLC, I don't know, but I made a video explaining all of Dragon Age 1 as quickly as I possibly could, and so I played all those games again to get footage for that, and then loved Dragon Age 2. Wasn't a huge fan of the story, thought it was kind of advertised poorly, like it was weird to follow some characters and then have them like wrap up, like there was like a fight that they kept showing in the advertising, and then that fight happens like 60% of the way through the story, and by the time you get to the end of Dragon Age 2, you're like, this is the ending? So the story of Dragon Age 2 is weird. I just enjoyed the combat so much. It's one of those rare games, RPGs, where I started mostly doing ranged and then was like, I want to create a new character and play through this game just as a melee character because I just loved the group dynamic so much. So played Dragon Age 1 and Dragon Age 2 several times. Dragon Age 2 is one of those games that I don't dislike as much as many people dislike in the industry, and then totally but just totally missed Dragon Age Inquisition. And one of the other things, too, is I remember us talking about it being weird that I think it won the DICE Game of the Year, but then didn't win any other awards. So again, it's not that it didn't deserve to win that award. It was just a weird year. So, but I will definitely get in the camp that even Battleborn and games that we generally don't like, that you commonly hear negative sentiments coming from the Allies, or just kind of an attitude that you don't like. Things are kind of like tinted with negativity. Thank you. I mean, that was great. It's I'm a little nervous sometimes when I read comments now where somebody's just like, I'm greatly offended by, I'm like, and they're like, you're talking of Dragon Age Inquisition. It's like, oh, interesting. Okay. Didn't see that one coming, but that's a fascinating, thank you for that note. I mean, that's a good thing, a good postmortem to have in that conversation, and a good thing to know moving forward. Ibrahim Sozer, I think having a $750 sponsorship tier instead of the $250 tier would be a better deal and appeal for sponsors. We've had a lot of success with the $250 tier with FrameTrap. I think that is in relation to how old that sponsorship is, the focus of the podcast, the viewership compared to the Easy Allies podcast, how we sponsor one versus how we promote one versus the other. But I like the idea of a $750 sponsorship anyway. It'd be interesting to see what we could possibly do more than the podcast to warrant such a massive sponsorship. But we have people that have sponsored us on that level. We've been around for so long, we've been around for almost 2 years, that some of the cumulative sponsorship money that is coming in from people, meaning how much they've given us in total, is pretty crazy. You could buy like a car with some of it. And so, crazy, the support that we're getting and we continue to get. So yeah, I would not put it past people to sponsor at that level. It is something that we will consider. Kuko Kukonen, you have to be careful with these sponsored tier patrons. I know extra money is always nice, but if you keep adding them, soon podcast halftime is like over 5 minutes, and that doesn't really help or isn't useful for that tier if people just skip over the part. I can't stop people from skipping over podcast halftime. That is a conversation that we have been having. How much is too much when it comes to podcast halftime? Are there ways that we can spice up not only the podcast halftime that we do on the Easy Allies podcast, but Frame Trap, and can possibly considering sponsorships with other podcasts? Is the sponsorship part something that needs to be exciting? I don't know. It is, I've often wondered, sometimes I'll do fun voices, or sometimes I'll do a character, or try to spice the podcast halftime up in some way. And I'll always be a little bit nervous because it's like, is this disingenuous to the sponsor? Are they like, well, I didn't know I was going to be sponsoring the month you did some weird Batman impression. Like, is that not cool? Haven't gotten a lot of negative response from sponsors, but it is something that I'm always considering. And that is a conversation that we are having. What to do with lots of people who want to give us $500. Max versus the game. Maybe you only do one video every 2 weeks, or even one every month. Maybe, Max versus the game wants us to do countdowns, top 10s. We're back to that conversation. Maybe you only do one video every 2 weeks, or maybe one every month. Maybe only do a top 5 instead of a top 10. Maybe you ask every ally to come up with their own top 5, and similarly to the way you vote on the Hall of Greats, you just tally the votes by yourselves to decide the official EZA top 5, avoiding all the debates and the potential conflicts. Max, every single point you have just brought up has been brought up and discussed internally. I'm not saying we've come to a definitive no on it, but it has been something where we've suggested that, thought about it, nodded, and said, okay, we'll get back to that. We're still not totally comfortable adding that to our work schedule, but we might potentially be making big changes, and so that's something that we definitely hear on a regular basis. Case in point, the conversation continues about the desire to get back to top 10s. But like Ibrahim was mentioning earlier, $750 sponsorship, there might be a way to shuffle around some of the rewards that we do to start bringing in other shows that people want. Free Dom, Souls Retro Part 4, very soon. The VO's done. I'm almost done with the music edit with the VO. I don't want this to come across as a negative. I don't want people thinking like, Jones is overworked, and Jones has spent a lot of time reading comments when he should be doing other things. This is true. I have spent a lot of time reading what people have been talking about over the controversies of the last couple weeks. It's not something that every single time there's a controversy I'm going to get caught up in. It's something that I felt this was an important opportunity to read, to take that opportunity and read as much as I could. And so I made that decision. But I want to get that retro done by the end of the year. So that's going to be my #1 goal. Outside of everything else, obviously, that I have to do. Not today, because we got group stream. We got stuff to do. Minimic, we all love your voice. That can't be true. Can I get an evil laugh? A wahahaha? Sure. Ha 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 ha! Is that my deadly do-right? Long twirly mustache. I could do like a Kefka impression. That's definitely more of like a G.I. Joe era villain than not necessarily your anime or JRPG villain of modern day. But yeah, see if I can do a better one down the road. There you go. That's the Tuesday, December 5th evil laugh for you. The Finnish Ally, I think you could do a better job of promoting your podcasts. Like few other patrons, I feel newcomers might find their length a bit intimidating. It's not very tempting to click a 90-minute YouTube video that you don't know exactly what it is about, which is a shame because they're usually filled with funny moments and great commentary. So it would be a good idea to drop a 10 to 15-minute teaser segment a day or two before releasing the full podcast. So basically, like every Thursday and Sunday. It could be a jolly news segment, a passionate rant, or anything in between. I can't think of a better example than Huber's rant on Battlefront 2's microtransaction, Frame Trap, November 13th. Finnish Ally, this is something that I have been thinking about a lot. Potentially doing that in either direction, cutting something out and using it to advertise a podcast beforehand, or cutting stuff out of our podcasts and using that to promote something possibly at the end of the week, looking back, not necessarily taking that out of every podcast to promote every podcast every time, but maybe taking sound bites, like you said, as opposed from going from 90-minute to 10 to 15-minute, even smaller than that potentially, and creating videos that are about specific topics where people can think, yeah, how does Easy Allies weigh in on it? It's like, well, they talked about Frame Trap, but you got to shuffle in there around the hour mark, and removing those things and using YouTube more effectively to communicate the opinions that we want to get out there. So I'm not going to say too much about it because it is an idea that I've had outside that I brought up with a couple allies and they've expressed positivity there, but it's something that I need to talk to the group about at length. That we'll probably get to after Goaties. Alexander Ziranov, do you like Kinect? I did. Not much to like about it anymore. Doesn't really exist anymore. But I did defend the Kinect for a long time. I have some regrets. I don't have others. I mean, I didn't play the PlayStation Move back in the day that much, but I played a lot now because I play VR games, so. That whole movement fiasco did have positive results. Great comment. Maggie Frere. Hello, my name is Maggie. My screen name is Dragon Azul 85 on Twitch. I subscribe to the EZA channel on Twitch right after Sweeney, so whenever attention is given to his name, I rejoice. However, I will say, as a longtime subscriber and follower, that sometimes I feel forgotten. I have not sent presents, but I try to be in chat as much as I can. And even though I'm approaching the 2-year mark, I know that the allies have no idea who I am. I recognize your name. I don't know you personally. I wouldn't say I could lock down your personality, but I definitely recognize the name. Not trying to prove anything there, sorry. I recognize the name. This is also crazy to me because I watch EZA content multiple times a week. I just want to know how I can make my presence more known. I live in Florida, so I can't attend the meet and greets out in California. I would just love to be able to see the group in person and show my appreciation. We got to get to the East Coast, whether it is the South Side in Florida or whether it's the Northeast, possibly going to New York or Boston, as I've expressed many times, as I'm interested in going to PAX East. Maggie, this one's a tough one for me because I'm not in your position. I can speak to the avenues that we have, like you mentioned, Twitch, places that you could go. This also kind of caters to what I was talking about earlier, having a more clear road into introducing yourself to the community and making your name known. But I invite anybody listening to this video to go back to Cup of Jones, to go to this comment, or possibly leaving a comment this week to address this even further about things that you have done in the past that have worked, things that you've seen, because this is not something I feel necessarily needs to be told to everybody in the community, because a lot of people have reached out to me who have said, I'm not that vocal in the community, I don't plan to be, I like being a fly on the wall. A lot of the concerns that were brought up about Colin were, the comments began by people saying, you know, long-time listener, first-time caller, long-time fan, don't really engage, felt like commenting this time. So, I would rather have fans speak from experience and talk about things that they did that work. But I understand your frustrations there, Maggie. It's something that I definitely want to avoid. Some people are just there. Some people are, there's names popping up here that I recognize. There's a lot of people that are regularly involved with the stuff that we do. And it's in some ways unfair that we'll call stuff out that every time we do a group stream, there's definitely subscribers, resubscribers that pop in that we don't get to because they fly by right at a crazy moment. And so there is recognition, attention is not being paid that deserves to be paid. And along with having more community involvement to manage issues like we've had the last couple weeks that pop up, addressing concerns, you know, different opinions, you know, vocal minorities and all of that stuff. It is important for us to allow people to find their place in our community if they desire it, if they want to seek that stuff out. At the same time, I can't just wave a magical wand and make somebody receive more attention in the industry. This is a great way to do it, though. Dragon Azul, 85 on Twitch. Keep an eye out for Maggie. And if Maggie says something, reply to Maggie and say, thank you, Maggie. Thank you for being a patron. And maybe give Maggie some tips. And if you pass me along those tips, I will communicate them in Cup of Jones. But you've given me something to think about, Maggie. I appreciate that. Thank you. Tegan Combati. I really, really seriously dislike the current group stream selection process. There are a large amount of people that are always disappointed by either the final nominations and or the streamed game chosen. And yeah, I realize in the end, it is ultimately about the guys getting together for some fun. So in that sense, the game chosen does not really matter, except for the huge fact that some games are just more entertaining to watch and play than others, which I agree. So with that said, why even give us the choice in the first place? Maybe there's a way to make this process better, but I'm not sure what it is. We'll explore that. Yeah, there are this kind of factors into another concern that I hear from people where the Twitch is maybe potentially run mostly on our interests when maybe it should be run more on things that I wouldn't say we're expected to play or being forced to play, but there's a question coming up later about PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds. Oh, boom, yeah, it's actually the next question from Mike Spam about, you know, where's the PUBG love from Easy Allies. So it's that question of what, do we want to express ourselves and play things that are important to us? Certainly every single full playthrough that I've done, Final Fantasy VI, Red Dead Redemption, Batman Telltale, has been something that I'm interested in. It's something that I think will be relevant to our fans, that will get viewership. I'm not going to play something, completely out of left field. But it is something that is important to us. But at the same time, we don't necessarily play, do things like, oh, this game was big, we should play this game because it's big. We mostly play games because we're interested in them, and we want to play them either with the community or play them and be, viewed by the community doing so. And I think the group stream selection process was an effort to counter that, to give at least once a week, give our group, give our community the chance to steer the ship a little bit, and give ourselves the opportunity to play something, to have not a lot of context going into something, personal stakes. I don't know everybody's opinions about Gang Beasts, but I know it's something that I've wanted to check out, and I know now it's something that our community did vote on, that did get close, and is now finally up there. I got to be honest, Tegan, this is an issue that I think we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. If we give our community the choice to pick something, obviously people are going to be disappointed sometimes with the games that are chosen. If we give people a little less freedom, pick the games ourselves, and then they choose, it again plays into why give us the choice in the first place if we can't pick the nominees. It's like, why I'm not going to vote on something I'm not interested in. If I don't like any of the nominees, let me pick the nominees. Now we let people pick the nominees. Yeah, but if one game is going to win anything, it's just a popularity vote, why even make it a vote? And if we pick the group stream ourselves, what's the point of getting together as a group if you're only going to pick things that you like? I mean, there's always some angle you could take on it, that it isn't a perfect process. But I really, really seriously dislike the current group stream selection process. Is some very strong language. Kind of like Dragon Age Inquisition, it's an interesting thing to be very frustrated about, and to focus on so much in a specific Cup of Jones question. And so there are fixes. I will throw one better out. I will throw one out. Don't know where the word better came from there. A suggestion to make it better. Perhaps it was that. And that would be maybe taking those second and third and fourth tier suggestions, things that came close but didn't quite make it in, and maybe making that a responsibility for one or more of us to stream, maybe having like the pickup game, that if something came close, maybe a couple of us to get together and play that later in the week. Not a promise, just an idea, something I will float to the rest of the allies, and we can maybe approach things like that as a solution to this, so that we can make as many parties as happy as possible. Speaking of people not being happy, Mike Spam, in light of the drama about TGA's GOTY nominations, this time to address the elephant in the room, I like that you called them TGAs and not VGAs, the Game Awards. The lack of coverage of PUBG. Why has EZA completely dropped the ball in coverage of that game? I don't think we've completely dropped the ball. No streams, no podcast discussions. I believe that's incorrect. I think either Brad Ellis or Michael Huber or both have streamed PUBG in the past. I know Ian has expressed actually interest in streaming it. I'm probably very bad at it. I haven't streamed Fortnite Battle Royale either. And no podcast discussions. PUBG has definitely come up several times on several podcasts. I know we talked about it a lot. I talked about it a lot in when concerning Fortnite. I know the wonderful Rick Hogue had a lot to say about the legality of these companies dealing with each other. And we talked about a little bit about, is PUBG... should that be nominated for Game of the Year? I mean, obviously it has the Game Awards, so we're not refuting that. As jurors, we will vote on whatever nominees are sent our way, or rather we have, and we'll find out what won this weekend. Yeah, we've covered it. So the completely dropping the ball and the no streams podcast discussions, I would correct, but at the same time, that hasn't been something huge that we're focusing on. I think that is maybe not a standard, but I think that is true of Easy Allies. We don't play a lot of League of Legends. We don't play a lot of Counter-Strike. We don't play a lot of... we don't really stream a lot of Hearthstone anymore. I mean, you go to twitch.com and you look at those most popular games that everybody is consistently playing every single month. Don't stream a lot of Dota. Don't stream a lot of WoW. Don't stream a lot of your traditional player versus player stuff. We're not streaming Call of Duty World War II every week. So a lot of times those big, huge games, the zeitgeists in the industry, are things that we are talking about on our podcasts, but not necessarily something that you're seeing represented from us on our streams. And it's the question of, and maybe something that needs to be addressed is, as I was talking about earlier from Tegan's suggestion, should we be playing things that we are supposed to be playing, that are expected of us to play, or should we stick to things that we care about, that we want to express with our community? Pluses and minuses. If we play something that may be outside of our comfort zone, or maybe not something we had planned on, but is popular, obviously that increases viewership. Obviously that introduces more people to Easy Allies. Obviously that satisfies the members of our fan base that are big fans of that game. But at the same time, you don't really get that personal connection of us having a personal investment in the game. And if we play games that do that, you get that bonus. But then, of course, all of the negatives that come from not doing the other. So, yes, I think now that PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, again, no promises, but now that PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds is finally launching, now that that will definitely be more people talking about it this month, we will hopefully cover it more after launch, possibly doing a review, possibly doing some streams post-launch on console, and definitely taking that comment to heart. Thank you, Mike Span. Michael Yao, what song do you listen to when you need to get yourself pumped or hyped? I feel for me it's a slow build song like Dance Yourself Clean by LCD Sound System or One More Time by Daft Punk. Daft Punk is a great example. The Tron Legacy soundtrack will do it. You just pop that baby in and I'm ready to go. Also a big fan of pretty much any Rocky soundtrack. I think those are really good good things to rev you up. Anytime I hear Eye of the Tiger, I kind of got to stop what I'm doing and reevaluate how into what I am doing I really am. And could I be more into it? Do I really possess the Eye of the Tiger at the time? Ahmad Atbeer, running a little long, so I want to wrap things up. Ahmad Atbeer, did you see the Batman Ninja trailer? What do you think of its interpretation of Batman? Yes, I am so down with Batman Ninja. I love how it looks. I love the voice acting. I love the style. I think the plot is great because it doesn't look like it's just specifically translating the world of Gotham. It looks like it's kind of dressed as Gotham, but it looks like very different. Obviously, the villains behave differently. Seeing Joker, or Jokers rather, seeing them with a sword is fascinating. It's gonna be really interesting to see how that story goes because I'm learning more and more about it after having actually seen the trailer. But a lot of that happened this week when I was all over the place reading other stuff, and so I really just have seen the trailer, which I thought was okay. I thought the trailer itself wasn't really amazing. It was one of those things where I was more into the concept than the actual execution of its announcement. But crazy to think about just discovering that Samurai Batman thing a ways back, and how well I thought that was accomplished. That's what I'm looking for. Produced, and then seeing this thing come together. I thought it was weird because I did get it at the first time. I was like, oh, they did another fan thing. And then I'm like, wait. And I went back and I'm like, this is the official DC account that's tweeting this. So this is something that's actually happening. G-Man, sir, when did you know EZA was going to be involved with the Game Awards? When I got an email from Keighley a couple months back, don't have the date. Don't feel really comfortable issuing the date I got the email, but it was not too far back, not earlier in the year. I think we had to keep a lid on things for a month or two. Kenneth Childs, what kind of process do you have for avoiding spoilers in reviews? It seems like it would be a difficult task, given that the person editing the video hasn't usually played the game. I bring this up because there were reportedly some pretty big spoilers in your Xenoblade 2 review, and I'm curious as to how something like that could slip through. I don't know if it's a case of this slipping through with Xenoblade. I don't think it's a mistake. When we have a reviewer that writes a script, they'll hand that off to an editor. If it's obviously different, in my case, I cut all of the things that I review, but if it's a different reviewer, different editor, and then back to that reviewer, and Bloodworth and myself and other people, if they want to watch a review before it goes live, are all involved in the approval process. And so I don't think it's a question of spoilers slipping through. I think it's just a question of what we consider spoilers. Spoilers in review in our reviews has been a conversation that goes back. The earliest mention, I believe, that I really took to heart of spoiling something was we were so hungry for reviews, and I think we were in a dry spell way back, 2005, 2006, I think, probably 2006, when a lot of games started being re-released. I remember it's when Metal Gear Solid 3, was when Subsistence came out, which was, I think, the special edition for Metal Gear Solid 3. And there were a lot of times we realized, okay, we just started doing reviews. We've only been doing them for a year. Brothers in Arms and God of War were our first reviews for Xbox and PS2. respectively. And we were like, we never got to review Metroid Prime. We never got to review Resident Evil 4. We never got to review a lot of games that were really big this gen because we didn't do reviews. And so even though these games have been out for a while, we have people that are really passionate about them. Remember, this was at the time before our editorial staff, not our editors, but our editorial staff that was supervised by Shane Satterfield. And so everyone that wrote a review also edited that review. It's when we didn't have writers doing reviews, we had editors doing reviews. So the editing was great, writing not so much. And because we were so comfortable with these games, Resident Evil 4, Metroid Prime, etc., the reviews were very spoiler heavy. And they came up and people were like, what the hell? And we're like, what? The game came out a year ago. And it's like, but I haven't played it. And you made the video for people that haven't played it. And so it was, I was like, oh yeah, okay. Like that, yeah, good point. Sorry. And so it's been a learning process ever since. And I think every time something like this happens, again, I don't look at it as a slip through, as a mistake, but as a understanding of where some people in our community view that line to be. And we certainly want people to comment on those things, to certainly let us know, hey, that one video at that exact TRT, I think that crosses the line. You can actually see, again, Mr. Daniel Bloodworth getting out there, putting out fires, communicating to our audience in a wonderful way. Went into chat and said, hey, if you want to avoid the spoilers, here's this review in script form, in the comments specifically on the YouTube video for the Xenoblade 2, Chronicles 2 review. And if you want to skip that spoiler, you can go from this TRT to this TRT, if you consider that spoilery. So again, it's not something that we definitively want to say, we apologize for putting that spoiler in the review, especially for a game as big as Xenoblade 2, as open as Xenoblade 2, especially for someone who has not watched this review, who has, I've read the script because I did the VO, but who has not played that game. I cannot speak to what is a spoiler or not. But that, we learn from those things, and we, every time one of those is brought up and brought to us, goes back into the collective, organized list of things that people perceive as spoilers. And things we can do to avoid that stuff. So that was a lesson. Thank you, Kenneth. Eric Mitchell, maybe it would make sense to address people more swiftly with something along the lines of a dedicated live stream. We're starting to get into it, not specifically though, regarding the concerns of the last couple weeks, where you could receive immediate feedback from the chat. So this was suggested as a possible solution to when these issues first came up, that we would have a live stream to address things. Couple issues with that. One, you potentially bring in people that might not be as informed in the issue to be involved with the live stream. Two, in the case of stuff that went down with Colin, it was over a Thanksgiving break. So this, you know, I was got a tweet from him to ask him to be on a show literally like the day before Thanksgiving, and so it couldn't have happened that week because I was on vacation. I was doing a lot of stuff that week. Excuses. The other thing too, and one of the things that I'm big lessons that I have from 2017 that I'm trying to remember as many times as I can is not to make the assumption that something can happen on Twitter and you can go to Twitch to solve it. That's something that can happen on Twitch or Patreon, you can go to YouTube to solve it. You always have to understand that bringing a conversation to a different medium or to a different platform, a lot of people on that platform are not going to know what the heck is going on. They're not going to be caught up to date at all on things. And so potentially, if we wanted to get out ahead of something and do a Twitch stream, we could potentially be inflating the issue out of control by suddenly rushing in to a whole new audience that is not educated on it, not familiar with the concept, and start talking about things that they don't know what the hell we're talking about. But again, that feedback is part of the whole process. So Eric, I'm not going to make promises that things like that are going to happen in the future, but I will consider that when eventually we have more long-term conversations about these things. 1, 2, 3... 4, 5 more questions that are specifically regarding Colin. Not going to do or just the, everything that's been going down. Not going to do an editorial this week. Going long, a little sleepy. Got 4 hours until Tabletop gets here to shoot. Got to run out, obviously, and check. Didn't get any mail last week. I wonder if we're going to get mail this week. But got to go get the mail. Got to go fill up the fridge. Got to go take care of some stuff. So I just want to answer questions. But I want to let you know. I want to do a debriefing for everybody. These are going to be very pointed questions. This is kind of like my dirty laundry here. I think there's the last couple of things. Obviously, tons of comments, tons of things that people wanted me to address. Spent a lot of time, as I mentioned, in DMs and emails. So a lot of this stuff I wanted to communicate with people offline to make sure I understand where they're coming from. They understand where I'm coming from. we can discuss ways to improve things moving forward without doing it in a public forum where all of our, potentially poor language, being used is not on display for everybody to see and misinterpret. But out of all the comments, these were concerns where people are like, you didn't talk about this, and so I'll talk about that, or talk about why I didn't talk about that. So that's it. That's the rest of the Cup of Jones. Cheers to you all if you are tired of all of this conversation and you don't want me to get into that. Because here we go. And for what it's worth, thank you for these difficult questions. Apologies to people that are not going to be satisfied with these answers. I would like to move Cup of Jones into other conversations moving forward as we get closer to the holidays. Some people were frustrated that they're like, it's clear that Ben has been affected by this, Bloodworth has been affected by this. I'm seeing their Damiani and Ian. I'm seeing them communicate a lot of these things. People frustrated with me that I've put them in that position. And maybe that's something that I have to make up for, where I need to get involved possibly in things that they do in the future to support them as they have supported me. At the very least, as they have dealt with some issues that in many ways are my fault. Including a lot of this. So here we go. Chris Briscoe. While I support you and the Allies regardless of the decisions you make, it was frustrating listening to you describe the issues brought up about Colin with such vague wording. One of the things that a lot of people have talked about that come up in a later comment is get angry. They're like, Jones, get political. You're a human being. You must have opinions about this. Let us know what those opinions are. That it can be frustrating to look at me and be like, you can't be neutral. Why are you so neutral? You're right and you're wrong. You're right in the sense that obviously I do have opinions about this. Obviously, maybe there are things that that I maybe have dialed back on in the interest of allowing our community to have a more public discourse and to not address something so specifically that we spend time, weeks, days and weeks, fighting over particular word usage. And like some people in a lot of comments, people that DM'd me and sent me stuff via email, would write stuff specifically in parentheses. You said this. What did you mean by that? If I'm having a one-on-one discourse with people, I love to get into that. I love to nitpick and talk about specific wording and ways I could have carried myself better. I really try to think before I mention these things. I'm curious what my count is in this, there's another one, in this current Cup of Jones. But I am kind of vague by nature. I am kind of a neutral. Taking this stance as trying to be a moderator, as trying to be something of a ref, as trying to hear as many perspectives as possible is kind of my politics. And so I can understand that's really boring and frustrating, and a lot of times I don't stand up for, in the way that you would prefer, stand up for the things that you believe in, but that's also kind of me being honest to myself in that gut defense, that a lot of people requested, a lot of people demand, for their money and for their attention to Easy Allies. That was not delivered. Speaks to me. And so if that's a flaw, I apologize. But in a lot of ways, that's me. And that's a little nerve-wracking to say. If I think somebody brings up specific issues, Chris, so I'm going to move on to another question. But if there's anything left to address that I don't feel has been, I will circle back around to your question and hopefully make some of that wording less vague. Spencer, Spools of Thread. I saw many people trying to educate a little on transphobia issues, in particular over the past week, but were repeatedly shot down by people saying X specific action isn't transphobic, despite not being a part of that group themselves, then saying they were being attacked. Call it paranoia, but I worry that this is being included under name-calling, which is something I said specifically, don't name-call, because of the gut reaction almost everyone has to being told that they're doing something wrong without realizing. Mention people share... oh, sorry. Then I did a little note. Yeah, I think my big takeaway... I said don't name-call, and a lot of people that were trying to defend themselves were frustrated because they're like, I'm trying to defend myself. I'm nervous that you saying don't name-call is directed at me. That wasn't directed at anybody in particular. I apologize that it might have seemed that way. I apologize if that was insensitive in identifying certain people that were just trying to make themselves understood. One thing on the opposite end of the spectrum that made me think about this a lot, and it's something that I tried to communicate with Colin when I was on Fireside Chats, it's something that I want to communicate to everybody, And I realize it can be frustrating, but a lot of times I try to look at the big picture because I try to approach the conversation from there, and then, like I said, individually or in separate conversations, look at the actual minutia and the nitty-gritty of what was said, in what sequence, how that could be improved. But I'm always looking at things we can agree on. I'm always trying to find those things that both sides can be like, yeah, that part, crossed the line a little bit, because then hopefully we can make progress. And so one thing that popped in my head was I had some people sharing some very personal information with me via email and via DMs. I had a couple people saying something and then immediately after that being like, why did I just tell you that? Why did I just tell you something so personal about myself, be it a relationship I had? Some people expressed lots of stories of loss, losing someone that they cared about, going through tremendous pain in their life, and finding hope through Easy Allies. It is a narrative that we've heard very often, that somebody said, you didn't know I was going through this at the time. I was going through a very difficult phase in my life, and you helped me get through that. I would either be, driving to something that I didn't want to do, or having a bad day and then going home at night and listening to your podcast and laughing through it. When we produce our podcast, when we do group streams, when we get together to try to create a positive environment that you can watch, and an environment, a place that you feel safe, a place that you enjoy, a place that you like to come back to, it's not good for us to constantly be thinking we're helping people in need. Some people are going through bad things in their lives, and that's why we get together, is to bring them through that. It is a byproduct of what we do. It is a positive thing about what we do. It's something that I want to continue doing. I always want to do that, but I don't want to expect it, and I don't want to be nice for the sake of that reaction. I want to be nice because you should be nice. You should be respectful. You should love people. But what got me thinking about it was because it was an unintended reaction. We did this, and this happened as a byproduct. That works both ways. We could do this. That could be perceived negatively by people. That could have a negative, byproduct. People could say, the way you talk so flippantly about Dragon Age Inquisition really pissed me off. The fact that I don't see a positive feedback from you having the Easy Allies community as a whole, or rather a specific tier on Patreon, pick the group stream selection committee game, or pick the nominees, and then have the... I always get that wrong, and I want to correct that. The group stream selection committee picks the nominees. The patrons of Easy Allies pick the winner of the group stream that we pick every week. I don't like that process. That is a unintended, natural byproduct of normal activity here at Easy Allies. That is one of the big things that I want to take away from this discourse. That's a big thing that I want people at CLS to understand. It's a big thing I want Colin to understand, is that you say something and something else happens that you didn't intend at all. Somebody took something that was an insult, somebody, misconstrued something, and even if that person lashes out, even if that person is angry at you and thinks to themselves, how dare you? How could you possibly think that way? You have to understand that that's going to happen. And I try not to be prideful. I try not to retaliate against those things. I try not to say, you're wrong. I just try to say, I hear you. I understand how you feel. I will take that information and I will absorb it. A lot of frustration from people that were not happy with the decisions I made, and therefore they think you say you listened to me, but you didn't. I have done as much listening this past week as I possibly could have. Apologies if the listening did not translate into action that you felt was justified. Apologies if those did not, translate into responses that you felt addressed the issues most directly. I'm going to continue doing that moving forward today. But I just want to be aware of that. And so, I did not direct that at anybody with name calling. In regards to people saying that, to this very common dialogue discourse that I saw pretty much everywhere, which was, I feel this, person A, I feel this way. Person B, what you just said is transphobic. Person A, I'm not a transphobe. It's just that circle over and over again. So, well, I didn't say you were, I just said that thing was transphobic. It's like, well, I found that insulting. So, well, I didn't mean it to be insulting. It's like, well, you just insulted me, now I'm angry. Well, I'm angry because you're not dealing with the issue. And then we just do that. And so, do we address how transgender people have been, discussed at CLS, at Easy Allies, how those people are addressed in our community? Or do we talk about the discourse? What's the best way to solve that problem? I don't know. We're going to be learning that lesson moving forward. That's not necessarily something that I'm going to be addressing specifically on next week's Cup of Jones. That is a lesson that I have learned. Transphobia is not a word that I have used in the conversation about Easy Allies and CLS, because again, it's really drilling down into specific things that I would rather have a more informed and specific discussion on, and not just bring up in a response to Cup of Jones. It's an important issue. It's something that we need to talk about. Again, it is going to lead into us having discussions behind the scenes about what's the best way to do this. As the editor-in-chief in Easy Allies, do I take a step back and realize, not my position on Cup of Jones to talk about stuff like this, not my position to get into politics on a show geared to communicate with patrons about how we are applying the work that we do and answering the concerns of our community. Big picture, little picture. What's the answer? I don't know. That has been the major thing that I have been stewing over this week, and why I take your comment, Spencer, very seriously. Elliot Lovig. It is my opinion that going on Colin's show was a mistake. If this is an attempt to gain more viewers' interest in EZA, I believe it backfired. I think that you should own up to this, or if you feel differently, you need to explain why. I think it did backfire, and I think it did raise interest. I think it did do both things. I think it did a lot of things, both positive and negative on all sides. I wanted, there's a lot of reasons that I can get into why I did Fireside Chats. I talked about some last week. I don't have that transcript in front of me, so I apologize if I'm repeating myself. I'll give you this one specific answer, though, that I don't know if I talked about specifically last week. I wanted to stay the course. As I mentioned, my instant reaction to Colin inviting me on his show was accepting, because I don't get that often. I don't get invited to many podcasts. I certainly have not been invited, to that was the first time I'd been invited to CLS. He's local. He's somebody I'd worked with before. There were signs. I know a lot of people are like, how can you be so ignorant to issues that have arisen in his community? I was not ignorant to those things, but I saw an opportunity there, and I accepted. After the fact, when I had accepted, a lot more issues came up. A lot of concerns came up that I was not aware of at Colin. A lot of tweets came up that I had not read. Again, I don't have time to check up on everybody that I know in the industry and everything that they're saying. So I've learned a lot about on Colin, learned a lot from our community about Colin, learned a lot from our community about CLS, learned a lot about Colin being on his show and just talking with him one-on-one. I wanted to stay the course. I feel that, I'm not 100% on this, but I feel that going back by not doing the podcast, that would be a whole different situation that we're in. I don't think that conversation, I think we're reaching the point where we've learned a lot of lessons about this. I don't think this is something that we can officially put on the shelf and be like, well, that CLS issue is over. That is something that is definitely going to be a process of making sure everybody is communicating the way that they feel, that everybody is being listened to, that all opinions are being considered moving forward. So I don't want to speak lightly of this, but at the same time, my head is moving all over the place, so I want to... I definitely understand that it backfired, but I just wanted to, as I said, stay the course. I wanted to have that conversation. I wanted to then, communicate directly with people from CLS and see how they reacted to those things. Almost every decision I made this week seemed to have some kind of negative impact. And so to me, it wasn't weighing the positives there when you're like, what kind of positives were you expecting? It's like, was it just an attempt to gain more viewers? That is a part of it, but it is also trying to mediate as much negative consequences from doing that. And so there's also that as well. Liquid Solid. The one thing, Liquid Solid dropped their patronage. Just FYI. The one thing that actually offends me is Colin singled out and sicked his followers to harass members of the EZA community, and your response is nothing. In fact, less than nothing, because you're still going on Colin's show. I've thought for quite a while that it was sad that EZA didn't stand up for Ian and Damiani when they were targets of harassment, but to implicitly endorse a source of harassment towards allies who just wanted to share their thoughts with you and Twitter is super gross to me. I understand that that's super gross. I am not comfortable, currently, in my position, as the editor-in-chief of Easy Allies, as the owner of this garage where we shoot things, as somebody who does this weekly show on Cup of Jones, as somebody who represents the podcast, not the podcast, as somebody who represents this channel, this Patreon, on social media, on Reset Era, on wherever, 4chan, Discord, you name it. I I wasn't comfortable doing it. I wasn't comfortable in that defense. I think that is a conversation that we need to have. A lot of people have brought up Ian and Damiani. A lot of people have said, you don't stand up for them. You don't stand up for them in the community. Our approach to trying to manage the discourse that happens in our community, be it through things that we can't control directly, things that we have produced and therefore should control, like our forums, to things that we didn't create, such as Twitter and Facebook and forums that we do not directly moderate. Our approach to that has been really simple. Like we dropped some people, we lost some mods, we had to do some policing with people that we felt used language that was not appropriate, that attacked people in ways that were not appropriate, that did violate guidelines that we do have at EZA. Our guidelines are not as strong as to enforce stuff that just falls short of that, stuff that falls just short of using derogatory terms and slurs and stuff like that, and is just kind of a general negative resentment and bad vibes, bad attitude towards people that possibly we need to stand up for within Easy Allies. That is a whole part of this conversation. Liquid Solid, you basically just described the conversation that we need to have moving forward. And so while I know it's frustrating to say we're hearing you and that we're moving forward and we're talking about these things, that's exactly where we are right now, because that's the question of what is my place. I want to have checks and balances when it comes to me. I don't want to speak out of turn about these things. And so a lot of people were like, it's frustrating that you didn't say anything. And some of that, as I said last week, was out of fear of saying the wrong thing, was fear out of speaking out of turn, stepping into a conversation that would have been more detrimental despite who I was backing and what support I was giving who. You described that as super gross. I can't refute that. I understand that my silence, be it happening at a very inopportune time for me personally, was still very frustrating and still not done. I saw a lot of people. I posted a big thread on Twitter apologizing for silence and talking about, you know, my thoughts moving forward. Got some people that were like, "Nice sentiment, way too late. You're not wrong." Alex, our last correct pronunciation, which I appreciate. Thank you, Alexander DeFreitas. How will you and the allies help incorporate those of us who don't 100% agree with the majority or status quo? If a Colin Moriarty fan were to become a patron, how would you make him or her feel like they belong? And the pronunciation for their last name. And this is another good question, and not something that I have an answer to, but something that I'm going to directly address with the rest of the allies. And our last question for today. We made it. We're through. Which is hopefully the net positive, one of them, from doing a collaboration with Colin, from appearing on his podcast and having a discussion, is that definitely heard from people that are like, hadn't heard of Easy Allies, or I remember you when you were back at Kind of Funny, or when you were working with Kind of Funny, or when you had worked with Kind of Funny, and didn't make the decision to actually come over and check your content, and this reminded me reminded me to do that. And so how do we then make this a positive environment for them? How do we encourage them to join the conversation in a civil manner? All of these are things that need to be considered moving forward, along with the excellent suggestion that we had, which is making that a very common... I think we've gotten very good at having the dialogue in our podcast about saying, here's what we are, here's what Easy Allies is, here's what you get if you invest in Easy Allies, here's the place to do it. If you're unfamiliar, we recommend you go to easyallies.com, join our forum, hang out with us on Twitch every week, watch our group streams, find out what shows that you're interested in and familiar with, and then possibly engage that way. But we should possibly be better at the dialogue of that first person. We encourage people to come in to Easy Allies, but then we don't necessarily have information that they can use. Maybe a video would be great. Maybe just something akin to Welcome to Easy Allies, making a separate video that's, okay, now you're a patron of Easy Allies. Now you subscribe to us on YouTube. Now you subscribe to us on Twitch. Now what? What's the best way to go if you like certain things? Where can you find? Because we have people that say, I love Easy Allies, I only watch Tabletop Escapades. I love Easy Allies, I only watch Frame Trap. I check into your group streams every now and then. Some people who say they're patrons to us and don't really have time to watch a lot of what we do. They take little vacations every now and then. And so it's hard to find the one path that fits all for everybody, and I certainly don't want to single people out. I don't want to put a giant spotlight being like, that person's a CLS fan, and they have now joined Easy Allies, because obviously each and every person of every community needs to be considered individually, and people like things for different reasons. But much as I mentioned earlier, the awareness that I have, the wokeness, if you will, that I received in terms of how our YouTube and Twitch and Twitter and Facebook and all these communities, separate conversations, if you will, how these can relate to each other, how it's a bad idea to just kind of touch on something on the podcast but not really get into it, how it's a bad idea to just start group streams with a little bit of, damage control and then move on. What is the best avenue? What is the best place to bring these topics up? And what is the best dialogue to have when it is brought up in that place? How long should we talk about these things? All of these are lessons moving forward. So the Colin Moriarty fan, the CLS patron, the CLS listener that is now coming over to Easy Allies, that is now aware of us, that now wants to come and hang out, is obviously something that we need to consider, is something we need to be prepared for, and is a road to love and respect that we need to pave and we need to advertise and be more clear about. One of the other frustrating things that unfortunately you can't see as we move forward. I mean, my hope is that if there's any more points that people want to bring up, bring it to me individually. Again, there's a lot of comments that people have addressed in Cup of Jones that weren't necessarily questions. I'm bringing up stuff now because it addresses stuff that I haven't necessarily touched on in the past. Moving forward, we don't want to make Cup of Jones, the let's check back in with the Colin situation show. But at the same time, this is an opportunity for you to bring up concerns. And so I want to continue these conversations. I don't know if we necessarily, moving into 2018, need to bring this up on Cup of Jones every time. But if it is, that Cup of Jones does, in a lot of ways, represent the current status of Easy Allies, especially now that we do it weekly. And so this might be, in some ways, the best time to talk about it. This is a long show. We're almost at 2 hours. And that was the last question. We have our takeaways, but I want to double back really quick to Chris's question. To just do one last thing. Chris Briscoe. Has Colin tweeted things that I think were inappropriate? Yeah. Has Colin said things that I wish he would apologize for? I kind of said something like that on CLS. Yes. Again, I try to be big picture. That's so insensitive and so frustrating and so unfair to a lot of people. That they're like, I want you to grab that one time he screen capped somebody and was aggressive towards a member of your community. That one time he discussed Asian Americans, was very unfavorable to them. That one time he compared transgender people to oak trees. Like there's so many, there's a list of many things that he has done that are offensive. I think addressing all of those, even though you can kind of put one blanket, I would not have acted that way, and I think there's maybe some reflection that can be done furthermore on that. Case in point of how much reflection I try to do here on Cup of Jones. On one hand, I do that in response to people that think that I haven't spoken as much on a topic. On the other hand, it can be frustrating for those people that I'm always apologizing for things that don't need to be apologized for. On the other hand, some people think that I'm not still communicating enough and not being as clear enough about issues like that. I think that is a line that I will draw that might be bad, that we can discuss moving forward on Cup of Jones, because a lot of frustrations that their allies have faced is me addressing something. Someone will communicate to another ally about something that I've said here on Cup of Jones that is frustrating, and they will come back to me and be like, what's happening? Where did this come from? So Cup of Jones needs to be something that addresses the Easy Allies at large. It needs to address as many issues as possible that affect the Patreon, as many issues as possible that affect your investment in Easy Allies. And the show needs to serve to inform you of things that are going on that you might not be aware of. I think moving forward and talking about these specific things are things that I can learn to address and learn to buck up and be brave and understand the consequences and take more direct action on social media about these things. Cup of Jones is probably not the place to do it. Because, again, we will be talking about an issue that is not reflected in other shows, does not concern generally, my specific political stance on something might not directly affect how other people view that stuff, or view their commitment and their patronage and their financial support of Easy Allies. And so when that line is drawn, when I don't get into super specifics about how I feel about racism, sexism, all of that stuff, you name it, it's tough when you have a list of so many concerns that somebody has towards somebody. It's like, what is the net gain of me going through all of these things and adding my personal political take when I am representing 8 other people that are working very hard to bring you this product that we do here at Easy Allies. we might have a meeting very soon where all of the allies say it's very important, where all the allies say, I give you that chance, I give you that freedom to discuss those things. I don't care if you get super political. I don't care if you insert your own opinions. I don't care if we get aggressive towards certain communities. I don't want to do that. That's my decision right now. And so it's milquetoast. It's frustrating. It's not a massive sect of our community that wants me to specifically address these things. But I have to accept, I have to bring in their anger and their frustration. I got to live with it. I have to not let that go, not forget that, and consider that obviously moving forward. A very important time for Easy Allies. Takeaways. Spend as much time in the EZA forums as other forums. Potentially, bring that up to the other allies. Evaluate how new people should find a home at EZA. And spice up podcast halftime. Obviously, there are other takes, but those are specific action items that I will be addressing moving forward. We're going into the holidays. We're wrapping up a very tumultuous year. We're going into our meetup. We're going into the last big event of the year with PSX, our last bets. Within a week or more, we're going to know which one of us is going to face Brad Ellis, the mighty Ultimate Brad, in the E3. It's crazy to think that a lot of that stuff is coming up. Our meetup, Easy Allies in Concert Part 2, not an official title, working title. It's time to start planning that. It's time to start booking those things. We have a lot of people that are like, I got vacation time that week. Oh, and maybe something that we can address that is a concern. I think we're going to very soon leave a Patreon-specific comment, tangent, sorry, about our meetup. And kind of address concerns from people last year. What'd you think about Easy Allies in Concert? People that saw it, people that attended. What would you like to see out of this year? What are things we can do to improve that? I believe the 21st falls on a Wednesday this year, which is right in the middle of the week, can potentially make things difficult. I think it fell on a Tuesday last year. Is it okay doing that in the middle of the week? Is that something you can travel out for? Does that make things difficult? Is it okay to have our anniversary celebration not on our anniversary? I think that week is GDC, which also super complicates things because some of us might be, while some of us were hanging around last year following our Easy Allies in Concert, having other meetups outside of that event. Some of us want to go to GDC. We want to travel up to SF and go to that event. And continue to promote Easy Allies. And so lots of questions surrounding our meetup this year. We want to address that. We have our meetup to do this week, and so I didn't want to confuse meetups. So after we have this meetup on Saturday, I will address this and ask people about that this Saturday as well, and see what they say, and then maybe throw up that post over the holidays, get people's input, and then hopefully make official announcements regarding specifically detailed line by line how our anniversary meetup Part 2, Chapter 2, John Wick Chapter 2, will go on or around March 21st of 2018. But yeah, bets coming up. Game Awards coming up. If there are a lot of issues concerning things that I still did not clarify to your liking and you would like to discuss this offline, and Twitter ain't your thing and email ain't your thing, and you really want to discuss this in person and you're going to the meet and greet, I'm open to these things. I want to talk about them. I'm happy to talk about them individually at the meet and greet. I'm happy to talk about them as a forum at the meetup. Even if you hear me at the meetup talking with somebody and you literally are going to say the exact same thing, I want to hear it from you. I want to hear it in person. I know there are people in our community that I know personally that I have met several times at different events that are not going to be happy about the decisions that I've made or the actions that I've taken over the last couple weeks. And it's frustrating for a lot of people because I'd say the majority of people are ready to move on from this topic and are tolerant, if not okay with the decisions, if not feeling positive about the decisions that I've made this week. In the interest of educating myself, I will always follow this process, be it Peach Beach Splash or CLS or whatever the next issue that could potentially divide this community will be. I will listen to everybody. I will make a decision that aligns not only in the best cause, the best decision that I think moving forward that'll cause the least amount of damage, but also my gut and how I feel, which I was encouraged by a lot of people to make decisions along those lines. And then following, when that decision was made, finding the sect of people, finding that group, however big or small, in our community that disagreed, that said, no, I understand you had to make that decision, but I think not only was the decision that you made incorrect, but the process about how you made that decision and how you communicated your reasons behind that decision were also incorrect, were also lacking. That's the reading, that's my assigned reading moving forward. Those are the people I need to talk to now. Those are the people who have not been addressed, who have not been taken care of. whatever that group is going to shift, is going to move throughout Easy Allies. You may not find yourself in that group one day, and then boom, 2 months later, you might find yourself in that group that seems like it is not being heard, that seems like I'm screaming at a wall. There are still people who have sent me emails I've not gotten back to. There's still people who have sent me DMs that I've not gotten back to. I've tried to be as diligent with that as possible. But I read each and everything. I appreciate each and everything. And not only has the process of dealing with this one particular issue been extremely educational here at Easy Allies in regards to this particular issue and the people being affected by it, but is educational in how I should do my job and the responsibilities that I have. At the end of the day, I feel like I talk about a lot of these things at the end of podcasts, and I have a good feeling about, like, yeah, I really expressed myself. Oop. At the end. They're like, yeah, I think I expressed myself well, and I think I got my opinions across. And then I'll read comments where people are like, wow, that was vague, and you didn't really get to it. And so here I am with my issue that I wanted you to address, and it's still been unaddressed. And apologies if we are still there. I think instead of doing like its own particular section on Colin, if a question for Colin pops up chronologically, I will address it chronologically, answer that, and then possibly do another editorial moving forward. I don't know if this is something you know about me, but I have very strong opinions about driving safety. We recently just did raps here at Easy Allies about nutrition. It was decided by me what the topic of the raps would be, and I chose nutrition because I thought that would be safe for all ages, the most non-ranty thing we could do, and might actually potentially have a positive message for our community I mean, that blood rap was worth it, talking about the food groups. Like, somebody's going to rap about the food groups, I hope, fingers crossed. But I almost thought about doing it about traffic safety. I was like, man, it'd be really great to rap about traffic safety. It is something that I really care about. A lot of people bike in my neighborhood. I see a lot of people in Southern California riding bikes all over the place. 90% of the time, those people are not riding bikes the way they should. A lot of times, I just see people being very silly on the road. And a lot of people have asked, hey, you guys cover video games, and now you're covering things like anime and film and television, and reaching outside of your normal themed stuff that you do. Would you be interested in doing other shows? I think, first and foremost, the one show that I've always wanted to do completely outside of video games is a show about traffic safety. You know, to either get CG recreations of common situations that I find on the road. You know, I'm born and raised in Los Angeles. I've seen some crazy drivers in my day and some people doing some really dangerous stuff. I myself have been victim to that. I myself have done some very dumb things on the road, and I've learned some pretty important lessons the hard way. And I just think it's something, much like the discourse that we use online, I think it's something that we think we're much better at than we are. I think we take for granted how difficult it can be to communicate with people in different languages across the world, and how difficult it can be to drive, and how easy it can be to forget some of the most common lessons that we need to learn while we're driving. So that might be an editorial that pops up next week, depending on what happens in this week. In the month of December, in the year of 2017. So an upcoming editorial will hopefully be non-CLS related, and we'll focus more on weird things that I want to bring up. So hopefully we can talk about that a little bit next week. I can give you the Easy Allies Brandon Jones Driving School. But that's Cup of Jones. Thank you so much. This has been a very interesting process. Not only in discussing these important issues, but integrating them into Cup of Jones. As we've started doing this weekly, we found not only what my role should be here at Easy Allies, definitely something that I've discussed a lot with the other allies, but how these issues should be handled and communicated here at Cup of Jones and here at Easy Allies. I'll say this. I'll wrap up with a little positivity. Apologies if that's insensitive to some, but hi. I believe in us. I believe in all of you. I've seen a lot of anger from people on you can't say on all sides. You can't say it. You got to use different language from multiple perspectives here concerning this issue. I've seen a lot of fear and anger. I've seen a lot of people saying, God, I was trying to communicate with that person and they got angry for reasons that I can't understand. I'm seeing good people. I'm seeing people that I think are capable of coming to terms, not on issues. We don't have to agree on the issues, but we have to agree on being nice to each other. We have to agree on having a civil conversation. I'm not as naive to say that we're going to get there next week. I'm not as naive to say that Easy Allies is going to have the influence that it needs to have to fix these issues. But I believe in the people that follow us. I believe in the process. I enjoy it. A lot of people have claimed that that's sensitive, where I've talked in the past about how it might be perceived that I want Easy Allies to bend, that I want to push our community in certain directions to see how much they can take before they break. I don't want to push people, but I want to learn from times where that happens outside of my control. I want to learn so much from times when a lot of people shout, "I'm not being heard, I'm not being expressed, I'm not seeing the results that I want to." I want to hear any and all voices. Cup of Jones has been a wonderful avenue for that. And I'm proud of so many people that were capable of either having a civil discourse or learning from that, starting with opinions that were taken out of context or opinions that really offended other people, and then stepping back, reevaluating, re-engaging in the conversation in a more constructive manner. Possibly moving forward, I need to congratulate more people that do that, and not single out, but shine a spotlight on people that are being positive and people that are a tremendous influence and a shining silver lining to this community, much more than I could ever hope to be. I'll wrap this all up with the standard pitch. You're all amazing. We all exist because of you. Financially, we exist because of your patronage. Emotionally, I thrive on this because of how much I can learn in the span of a week. I view Really Easy Allies as a grad school of sorts, as me being trained in a lot of things that I was not trained in. I'm a production specialist. I learned how to write and make videos. And now a lot of this community management thing is another lesson to be had year after week. Week after week, year after year. Again, Daniel Bloodworth. Let's shine a spotlight on him and say thanks. Let's just wrap up with Bloodworth. I talked about a lot of things. There could potentially be some negativity and some frustration about me not addressing everything that needs to be addressed. But there's one thing we can all agree on. Daniel Bloodworth is amazing. I love all of you. Thank you. Cheers.